It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
So, Andrew, welcome to Canada's podcast. As you can see, I'm sitting in the middle of Bloor Street in Toronto. I'm not quite sure where you are, but, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what made you become an entrepreneur, what you're up to now. Just give us a little bit of background for our listeners and viewers so that they know who you are, kind of thing.
My name is Andrew Skafel, and I'm sitting on my patio in Napa Valley, at least my virtual patio. I'm actually like many of us. I am working from home in Ottawa, Canada, at the moment. My background, I'm the president and CEO of Edgewater Wireless. And I've been a lifelong entrepreneur that's really I've really found a lot of enjoyment in the technology space, and I've been in the tech industry over 20 years now, and spent a good chunk of my time based in the Asia Pacific region, South America, and finally now back in Canada.
Okay, that's cool. So with the current pandemic, the COVID-19 scenario that's happening, these topical podcasts, we're focusing a little bit more. We're trying to mix your journey up with some of your responses to what's happening. How are you managing it? On a general level, obviously, everyone's got employees, so that's really more in terms of that internal level. How has it affected you?
We're in the Wi-Fi space, and the core of what we do is actually semiconductor and intellectual property heavy. So as the pandemic started to really unfold, our key priority is our biggest asset. First our people, then the customers, and then our stakeholders. And because we're an IP intensive company with a lot of software, it was somewhat a somewhat smooth transition to keep people safe and have them working from home. So that's been a real big focus for us, and I think that's been the biggest change in the way that we work. Internally it's taken some adaptation, and then I'm sure we're like many.
Yeah, we're similar. Usually half of us went to the office. Now none of us are going to the office. That's basically the difference, I think.
That's right, and I've become accustomed to some background noise every now and then when we're doing Zoom meetings and things. But the schooling from home is challenging as well.
Is this in the longer term? Will this sort of pandemic, will COVID-19, all the things that have happened, is it going to change your business model? I mean,
it will have profound and global changes to the way that we all work and live. I think our business model is, this has had some major impacts to two areas of our business. Supply line and customers. I think on the supply line side, we're seeing impacts to those who rely on some of the harder hit markets like China as part of the global supply chain. And that's impacted mainly our larger competitors very early on, as the entire country of China pressed pause, essentially, right, to try to get a handle on the pandemic, which was very much the right thing to do. For others like ourselves, we manufacture in the U.S. And we've seen very little in the way of supply line disruption to date. And that's not saying that there won't be some supply line disruptions going forward, but I think we've been fortunate in that sense. Where we've seen the most profound change, and both you and I are examples of this, is on our customer side. One of our major customer segments is the service provider space, or in particular the cable operators through our work with Cable Labs. And they have seen a dramatic and profound change to their business. A few days ago, one of the senior executives from Comcast showed network statistics that said they'd seen a 60% rise in network traffic where work from home is taking place. So that's a phenomenal step up on the network capacity. And more relevant to us, they saw a 24% rise in mobile data to Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi has become it's gone from being a nice to have to a critical element of the way we communicate.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. It's interesting. So let's get back to you, okay, a little bit. I mean, we were talking earlier about your educational background. You've got a great educational background. Anyone would have employed you. Why did you become an entrepreneur? As we talked about earlier, it really is a series of bad decisions. I think there's a lot of enjoyment to taking the entrepreneurial path. And, I think that enjoyment, stems from a belief and a real desire to make things better and to go for the change and the excitement that only the entrepreneurial path can offer. And that's what really brought me down that path, and then meshing that with technology. There's just such a phenomenal amount of opportunities in the technology space. Okay, so you're in Ottawa. I'm actually. Well, I'm not really sitting in Bon Bloor Street. I'm actually in downtown Hamilton. So let's not talk about Toronto or Ottawa or Hamilton. Let's talk about Ontario. Why did you could have gone to Silicon Valley, you could have gone here, you could have gone there. You said you were in Brazil. Why did you come back to Canada to build up? To make a living, to build companies, that kind of thing. I'm curious about that. You were in Asia earlier on. You said so. Why come back here?
I think Canada and offers such a great platform for starting and building businesses. There's the fact that we have such a phenomenal depth of talent. One of the reasons I ended up in Ottawa is it has such a strong history of technology success stories and a deep ecosystem of engineering talent. And the engineering talent is one thing, and as we I'm not an engineer by training. I'm anything but, and I think the fact that there's so much expertise there, there is very much a niche that a creative entrepreneur can carve out and really work with some of the greatest minds in the in the country and in the world.
Okay. Well, kind of with that in mind, just moving back to the COVID thing for a minute, and thinking of Canada and our country, which is really important for us. Obviously many businesses are going to be in trouble in the long haul. What kind of silver lining do you see coming out of this?
I think you never want to be the one that's profiteering from crisis. But our business is profoundly impacted by what's going on. Our thesis around Wi-Fi is that it's been around since 1999, and since 1999, it's followed the exact same approach. It's followed a single lane road approach, which in 1999, when you or I were sitting in our basements with a laptop connected to a single router, worked great. But fast forward to today, there's 8 billion Wi-Fi devices in the market. 4 billion of those shipped over the last year. So there's a phenomenal number of devices, and it is a market that is ripe for change to go simply from a single lane highway to a multi-lane highway. And our approach is to build and patent the industry's first multi-lane highway. Now this movement of work from home means that the vast majority of us are now connected over Wi-Fi, and I don't know about your experience, but it's routinely interrupted and has now become one of the biggest choke points of the network. Over 40% of customer care calls at the big cable operators was Wi-Fi related. And that was before COVID. Now, when you see these massive spikes, it's certainly not getting better, and it really does drive the fact that.
I live in a condominium building with probably about 100 or so people in it, and it's been fine, except now everyone's home.
That's right.
Some days it's not very good, and that's exactly what you're saying.
That's and that's really the silver lining of the pandemic for us is that it is a very strong proof point about what we're doing and drives our customer demand. So that's really the upside. The crisis aside.
So coming back to you as an entrepreneur and your experience and how others can learn from it. What's been the greatest challenge you've faced in business today, and how did you overcome it?
One of the greatest. It really depends on the day. One of the biggest challenges I think for any business that I've been in. Particularly in the technology space, is identifying your market and your market need, and I think that has been that has been a constant struggle for newer emerging technology companies that I've been involved with, and then once you have that market identified, then everything clicks and falls into place. And
just let me hold you just a second. Okay, so you were sorry, I interrupted you there. You were sort of talking about the challenge side of things, and how
I think the biggest challenge is identifying the market. And once you do that, that's the catalyst for driving the growth of the company. And one of the key things is to really be ruthless on how you identify your market. The worst thing a new company can do is to try and be all things for everyone and go out with a broad view of the market. Success is much more likely if you narrow that down and actually know what you do better than anyone else, and define that and stick to that as your core principle.
So this is my lesson thing. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Gosh, that's a good one. Don't stay out as late. Nothing good happens after midnight. Uh, no, as a 20-year-old self, I think, gosh, that's a really difficult question.
Yeah, I know it is. That's
I,
why I
I,
put it in there. I mean, I don't know how that. I mean, it's a tough one to answer. I'm not sure I was in this world at 20 very often.
Well, that's it. And I think a lot of the exposure I was lucky enough to have as as a 20-year-old, all the mistakes that you make, all the new things that you do, sort of leads you already all the way down the path to where you are. The biggest thing I would say is, don't take yourself so seriously.
But I mean, this is a good one, and I love the answers I get. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I have really been fortunate to have some great mentors along the way. Very early on, there were a couple of folks that, especially as a 20-year-old, got me to press pause before you speak, and inserting that pause and really allowing yourself the time to think about what's going on and the impacts of it is it's pretty powerful advice, especially for a 20-year-old.
Yeah. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
Describe myself. I would say endlessly optimistic as one word, and fortunate are probably the two words. The optimistic side of things, I think that is one of the critical elements of being an entrepreneur. You really do have to see the glass half full and the opportunities that are ahead to stay motivated and to drive the business forward. Mm-hmm. And fortunate, I particularly in this environment, I do consider myself to be quite fortunate that everyone's healthy.
Yeah. What book are you currently reading, listening to, whatever? However you do books.
I am reading some very old books right now. I managed to discover the Churchill biography, an original edition, which is heavy reading.
I don't think I finished that. I remember reading it a long time ago.
That's right. I'm only partway through. And short reads. I am a regular reader of The Economist and Fortune as well. And in terms of things that I'm listening to, I'm starting to listen to a lot more podcasts and some of the analysis that are taking place just on the global markets.
You're a morning or a night person?
I'm very much a morning person. Very much.
Same here. What's your most favorite place in the world?
Oh gosh, there's a couple of places. I'm a huge fan of the Canadian Rockies. I love the tranquility and the space there. The other place for me is our place on the lake where our family goes. So it's quite some people that I'm with too.
So, last kind of thing on COVID before we kind of close it. Is there any advice to our fellow entrepreneurs, who a lot of whom listen to the podcast, that you can think might help them, guide them through this? Anything that you could say to them?
I think particularly in a time of crisis and an unknown like what we're going through today, there's really two things. First of all, look after your people. Whether that's your team, your team and your family. And second of all, learn to be very comfortable that you may not have all the answers. This is very much a dynamic time like nothing we've seen before. And you need to be comfortable making decisions based on less than a full set of facts.
Okay. So, Andrew, how can people listen to this? They often like to get a hold of our subjects. How can people get a hold of you online?
I can be reached either directly via email or through our website, which is edgewaterwireless.com. My email or contact details are up on the website. We're a publicly listed company, so we trade as YFI on the TSXV. So it's pretty easy to find my information.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks, Andrew. That was great. That's some really good observations there. And thanks, everyone, for listening. Till next time, it's Phil Briss from Toronto's podcast.
Thanks for having me.